So you saw the fault that's just developed on the old Arcam 2. Just as I was turning on, it made that horrible noise, only on the left channel. You could hear music playing in the background and on the right channel, but the left channel had all that noise. Sounds to me like kind of surface contact noise, like a bad connection somewhere, like if you get a bad switch or plug and socket or dry joint somewhere. That's what it sounds like to me. You may have noticed that the bass and treble and volume, the tape monitor switch, the input selector switch had no effect, so wherever it's coming in must be after that. So if we have a look at the circuit, we've got the tone controls here, so it must be left of this, which will include all the switching and the volume. So I think the earliest part it could be would be after the balance. So the only thing really that remains before it goes to the power amp here is this circuit here, which is should be the power on muting. So it is possible that something is going wrong here. Maybe the capacitor's breaking down, or something. There's something here means that normally when you turn it on, it mutes for I don't know, a second or two as the capacitor charges up and then turns off. So if there's something that's not quite right here, maybe even I don't know, just even dry joints maybe. So that's something I'm going to look at probably first, try to eliminate that. And if that looks good, then I guess we're onto the power amp. I suppose anything in the early stages, I would think. Well, let's hope it's maybe not the power amp. I'm going to look at the muting circuit first and see if I can eliminate that. Of course, now I've got the amplifier open and on the bench. The fault doesn't seem to want to appear, so it's going to be one of those hard to diagnose intermittent faults, perhaps. Anyway, I did just notice something maybe some of you have already noticed in this muting circuit. It looks to me like this is mislabeled. The minus 15 surely should be plus 15 and vice versa. You can see, I think, more clearly if I redraw it. So certainly this Zener should be reverse biased, so that should be at the 15 volt here through that 270. Anyway, I mean, there's not much that can go wrong here, I think, in the sense that that FET is the only thing that's common. Sorry, that's the only thing that there's one of per channel, and so this circuit is common to both channels and then feeds two individual FETs. So if there is something wrong, it must be just the one FET that's on the left channel that mutes the signal line here. But it certainly seems to be behaving at the moment, and I've wiggled the FET. There's no dry joint that I can tell. So that's one thing. I did notice one other thing. If I get the meter out just on the output, like so, and just see what DC offset we've got. So on the right channel, we've got a very small 3 millivolts. If I well, maybe a little bit higher, depending on how I Okay, now I press properly on the contacts, it's 3 millivolts. Moving to the left channel, I'm getting at least 20 millivolts, 22 now is stable. So that's interesting. I don't know whether that's a sign of something slightly amiss on the left channel regarding the DC point. I think I will check some of the other points that are labelled here. So there's the standard biasing here, if it'll focus, but some of these voltages here I might check and see if there's anything suspicious going on. But yeah, it's a bit tricky if the fault is intermittent. So I did find that the quiescent current was a little bit on the high side. So as you saw, 7 millivolts indicates the voltage across that those resistors, and these pots here for the left channel and for the right channel, they adjust that current. So I've tweaked those down a bit. I think what was they reading? Something like 50 milliamps or something like that. So quite a bit over the stated 7 millivolts. But I mean, they were similar on both channels, so that couldn't have caused the symptoms. Just something I noticed in passing. I did check these voltages here. Just very, very slightly low, 0.53 I think, and 0.52 or something like that. So I think those are fine. So nothing, way out of whack here. So I think I'm just going to put it back together and see how it goes. One thing I will try if it does appear again, which I hadn't thought of previously, was on the output you've got a pair of switched speaker outputs which turn off when you put the headphone jack in, and a pair that are all permanently connected. So what I could do if the fault appears is, without changing anything else, just change the left channel to the unswitched output. That would isolate any contact problems within that switch. I'm wondering whether to take it apart and clean it, even just for good measure. It's sort of buried down underneath there. I'd have to take off the front. Not sure. I decided to take off the bracket here that was obscuring the socket for the headphones. I desoldered all the connections underneath, but it didn't seem to be moving much, and it looks like because it's tied with this front bracket, or this front, whatever you call that, fascia, front panel. So that's a bit annoying. It looks like I'm going to have to take off this, which means unbolting everything that's attached to it. But if you look closely, you can see that it's the plastic's fractured. It's come apart. So I don't know whether that would have an effect on the switch inside, but maybe it gives me a bit more impetus to actually take it apart further. So I think that's what I'll do. Alright, after some jiggling and desoldering the pins, that piece comes off, and you can see this broken side here, and these two pieces of metal that can you see, if I pull that apart, those two normally contact. Let me see if I can point to them. So a piece here and then a piece here that are normally connected to each other, and then when you push the headphones in, it pushes them apart. So that's the switch. So I think if this piece here was moving sideways like that, because there's a spring force between those two pieces of metal to keep them together normally, but over time the plastic's weakened, so that force that's always pushing sideways has just fractured the plastic. So that would explain, I think, the noise on the left channel, if that was just starting to make a bad contact. So yep, I'm going to maybe give those pieces of metal a little bit of a clean while I'm here, and then try to glue up the plastic and maybe put some epoxy around to strengthen it as best I can. So I think I'm going to assume this is the problem. It's certainly a problem, and it will no doubt get worse if I don't glue that back together in some form. Now, interestingly, it does look like the other side. I was going to say I might have glued that, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's just some spray cleaner that's got onto it. It just looked like a piece of or a thread of glue, but no, maybe not. So I think I'm going to strengthen that side as well, because if one side fails, obviously the other one is likely to as well. Alright, so I glued this back on, put a bit of extra glue there on the side to strengthen it a bit, and down these ridges, just to try and give it a bit more strength, both sides. So now just to fit that on like so, maybe I might glue it on that side for a bit more strength, I'm not sure. And I've put some contact cleaner down here as well, down between those little holes there, and yep, I think that will do it, and we'll give that a go. So it's all back on the shelf, back together again. It's been working for several days, no sign of the fault appearing again, so I'm reasonably confident that the problem was in the phone's socket switch that we saw, and hopefully that will stay intact for a few more years. Thank you for watching.